"We need your bedroom for the baby," my son said. Eleanor Price, 71, widow and mother, didn't argue. Daniel, the boy whose crib once fit in that very room, now pointed to it as if it had always been his. So I quietly packed my bags and left. But the following day, the house keys were in my lawyer's hands. I'd raised children under that roof. Now I was the one deciding who stayed. And when Daniel came home with a nursery set, the locked door answered for me. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. The oven dinged softly. Dinner was ready. Sarah wiped her hands on a dish towel and glanced into the living room with a small smile. Jack stood by the window, shifting from foot to foot like a boy with bad news. Amanda sat curled into the corner of the couch, one hand on her belly, the other scrolling her phone. Sarah stepped forward. "Everything okay?" Jack looked at her like someone preparing to disappoint. "Can we talk for a sec?" That sentence in his tone always meant something was about to fall apart. She nodded. "Of course." Amanda didn't look up, just froze mid-scroll. Jack cleared his throat. "We've been thinking, with the baby coming, space is getting tight." The room suddenly felt smaller. Sarah folded the towel neatly, waiting. "We need your bedroom," Jack said, fast and low. Her smile didn't even have time to drop. It just vanished. "My bedroom? It's the biggest room," he said quickly, "and closest to where we'll put the crib. Amanda needs more rest these days, and it just makes sense." Sarah's heartbeat slowed. The air around her thickened. "So you're asking me to leave?" No, it's not like that," Jack insisted. "You've been incredible, Mom. We're just trying to figure out what works best for the family right now." Amanda finally spoke. "We really appreciate everything you've done, but we need space to build our life. Our own life. Our own life." Like Sarah was the guest who'd overstayed. She gave a slow nod. "I understand." Jack exhaled. "Thank you. I didn't want this to feel like a rejection, but it did." Every word was a quiet eviction. Amanda stood. "Let us know if you need help packing." Sarah didn't respond. She turned down the hallway, the familiar creak of the floorboards under her feet, ones she used to step on softly while carrying Jack to bed. She closed the bedroom door behind her. The suitcase was still in the closet from when she moved in after the divorce. She pulled it out, laid it open on the bed, and stood over it in silence. Then, carefully, she folded her clothes, sweaters she wore during morning walks, a scarf from her best friend, a framed photo of Jack in 3rd grade, with his gap-toothed grin. She wrapped the frame in tissue and placed it gently in a side pocket. There were no footsteps in the hallway, no knock. Just the buzz of conversation in the living room, and the timer on the oven going off again. Sarah opened her nightstand. Inside was a gold locket from her mother, a half-used notepad, and a card Jack gave her on her 50th birthday that said, "You'll always have a place with me." She took the locket, left the card. She zipped the suitcase slowly. The sound was loud in the stillness, final like a locked door. She walked back to the door, resting her hand on the knob. Behind her, the room smelled faintly of lavender. Of her, but in this house now, even that seemed to take up too much space. She opened the door. Sarah stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her with a soft click. It echoed louder than it should have. Her son's voice replayed in her mind. "We need your bedroom for the baby." And just like that, she knew she was no longer part of this home. Not really. But she didn't crumble. Not yet. She just kept walking. It wasn't just about the room, it was about everything I'd sacrificed for them. The porch light flickered as Sarah stepped outside, her suitcase trailing behind her like a final thought. The night was quiet, cold, and strangely still. No breeze, no chirping crickets, just the low hum of a street lamp, and the soft click of the front door shutting behind her. She didn't look back. Her hands trembled as she unlocked her car. She tossed her bag into the back seat and sat for a moment behind the wheel, breathing shallowly. Her chest tightened. It wasn't just the bedroom, it was the years, The decades, the moments they no longer remembered, but she could never forget. The school drop-offs, the scraped knee, the flu seasons, the late nights when Jack called her just to talk in college, all of it, swept aside now like a coat hung in the wrong closet. She started the engine, headlights washed over the house as she pulled out of the driveway. For a split second, she thought she saw Amanda pull the curtain shut. Then darkness again. Sarah drove aimlessly at first, not sure where she was going. Her heart ached in that dull, buried way that only comes after a deep, clean cut. The kind of pain that doesn't scream, it settles. She passed the grocery store she used to walk to with Jack in a stroller. The park where he learned to ride a bike. All those places that once felt like pieces of a life she had built, now just intersections. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Grace. Her sister. She answered quickly. "You okay?" Grace asked, her voice hushed with worry. Sarah hesitated. "I'm driving." "Where?" "I don't know. Just away." There was a pause on the line. "Come here," Grace said. "I'll make up the guest room." Sarah bit her lip. "You sure? Don't ask that. You're not a burden. Just get here." Sarah nodded, even though Grace couldn't see her. "I'll be there in 20. As she hung up, the tears finally came. Not loud sobs, just silent drops that slid down her cheeks and blurred the dashboard lights. She didn't wipe them away, let them fall. Let it all fall. 20 minutes later, she pulled into Grace's driveway. The porch light was on, warm and steady. Grace was already at the door in slippers and a hoodie, holding a mug of tea. Sarah stepped out of the car slowly. Grace didn't say anything. She just opened her arms, and Sarah folded into them without a word. They stood there for a moment, the night wrapped around them. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and something baking. Sarah placed her suitcase near the stairs, hesitating only slightly, before following Grace into the kitchen. "You want to talk?" Grace asked gently. Sarah shook her head. "Not yet." Grace nodded. "Then sit. Drink. Sleep. Talk tomorrow." Sarah managed a tired smile. "Okay." Later in the guest room, smaller than the one she'd just left, but somehow more hers, Sarah curled under the blanket. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Jack. "Hey Mom, can we talk?" She stared at the screen. Her finger hovered over it. He hadn't said sorry. Not yet. She turned the phone face down on the nightstand, and closed her eyes. The next morning, just as Sarah sat at Grace's kitchen table sipping coffee, her phone rang again. Jack. Calling this time, not just texting. Grace looked over the rim of her mug. "You gonna answer?" Sarah's hand hovered over the screen. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear his voice. "Not yet." He wanted to talk, but I wasn't sure if I had anything left to say to him. The phone rang again. Sarah sat at Grace's kitchen table, her coffee cooling in front of her. Morning light slanted through the blinds, casting thin lines across the table like bars. She stared at the screen. "Jack. Calling." Grace looked up from across the table. "You going to pick it up?" Sarah pressed the decline button instead and slid the phone face down again. "I can't," she said. Grace didn't press. "You will, when you're ready." But Sarah wasn't sure she'd ever be ready. Not to hear whatever excuse Jack had rehearsed. Not to pretend the last few days could be undone with a half-hearted apology. By mid-afternoon, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Her chest tightened, but she didn't listen. Not yet. She spent the rest of the day cleaning Grace's kitchen, then folding laundry that wasn't hers. Something about putting things in order helped keep her mind still. She didn't want to talk, but she couldn't sit either. That night, curled in bed under Grace's soft quilts, Sarah finally opened the voicemail. "Hey Mom, I wanted to say I'm sorry if it came out wrong. We didn't mean to make you feel pushed out. It's just been a lot, with Amanda pregnant, and everything. I thought maybe you could stay somewhere else, just for a bit. Temporarily." There was a long pause, like he didn't know what else to say. "Can we talk tomorrow? Please?" Sarah stared at the ceiling for a long time after. She didn't cry, not this time. The next morning she called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Mom? Thank you for calling. I'm not coming back," she said, her voice steady. "Not unless things change." There was silence on the other end. What do you mean? I mean I won't come back just to be treated like I'm furniture that can be moved when it's inconvenient, Jack sighed. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said quietly. I know, she replied, but you did. Jack didn't respond. Sarah let the silence stretch before she continued. Do you know what it feels like to be told you're no longer part of the family space you helped build? Mom, you don't need to explain anything else. I just needed you to understand. Jack's voice was small. Can't we just talk it through? Maybe you come back for dinner this weekend. We'll figure it out. Sarah looked out the window at Grace's small backyard. A squirrel darted across the fence, completely unaware of the rift in her life. I'm not ready for that, she said. You're really not coming back? Not right now, she answered. Maybe not at all. After the call, Grace found her in the living room, sitting with her hands folded in her lap. How'd it go? He doesn't get it, Sarah said. Not really. He's sorry he feels guilty, not sorry for what he did. Grace nodded. Most people are only sorry for how consequences make them feel. Sarah leaned her head back against the couch. He asked me to come back for dinner. Are you going? She shook her head slowly. I said no. A slow breath escaped her lips. The decision didn't bring relief. Not yet. But it didn't bring regret either. She'd drawn a line. For the first time in a long time, she hadn't crossed it for someone else's comfort. That night, as Sarah read quietly in bed, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a name she hadn't seen in years. Maggie. An old friend. A message popped up below. I have an idea that might be perfect for you. Call me. Sarah stared at the message. An idea? She sat up, pulse quickening, a new kind of curiosity blooming in her chest. I couldn't go back to being just a guest in their life. I had to find my own path. The next morning, Sarah stood in Grace's driveway with a thermos of coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. She had just texted Maggie, free to talk if you still have time. The reply came instantly. Yes, call me. It's something you'll love. Sarah dialed before she could second guess herself. Maggie's voice was bright, familiar and a little breathless. Sarah, oh, I've been meaning to call you for months. I've been working on this little boutique downtown. You know how I always wanted to open one, right? Sarah laughed. I remember. You always said you'd start one once your kids got out of college. Well, Maggie said, and I've got the space. But I don't want to run it alone. I need a partner. Someone reliable, smart with actual taste. That's you. Sarah blinked. Me? You've got the eye. Remember those gift baskets you used to make for the neighborhood events? And the holiday window? You were always the one with the finishing touch. Sarah leaned against the hood of Grace's car, the morning sun warm on her back. Her fingers tingled. She hadn't felt this kind of electricity in years. Are you serious? She asked quietly. 100%. Come see the space. It needs work, but the bones are good. It could be our thing. Later that afternoon, Sarah drove to the downtown address. Maggie had texted her. The boutique space was small but charming. Brick walls, dusty hardwood floors, sunlight pouring through tall front windows. It smelled like history and potential. Maggie walked her through it, pointing out fixtures, mirrors, layout ideas. Sarah ran her fingers along a vintage shelf. Her mind leapt ahead, soft jazz playing, handwritten tags on locally made candles, a warm cash register chime. Something clicked. She wasn't sure if it was timing, fate, or just a desperate need to feel useful again, but it felt like a door opening. I want in, Sarah said. Maggie grinned. Let's build it. Back at Grace's, Sarah couldn't stop smiling. They spent the evening scribbling ideas on napkins and scrap paper, sketching branding concepts, and jotting down suppliers. Grace watched with an amused smile, handing over tea and snacks like an on-call cheerleader. This suits you, Grace said. You're lit up. Sarah nodded. I forgot what it felt like to be excited about something that was mine. That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The bedroom still felt borrowed, but her future didn't. She imagined the boutique on opening day. She imagined herself unlocking the door each morning, not to someone else's house, but to a life she had built with her own hands. Her phone buzzed. A new email from Jack. Subject, "Let's talk." She opened it. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot since our last call. Amanda and I were wrong. We didn't handle things right, and I know I hurt you. The baby's coming soon, and I thought I was doing what was best for my family, but I didn't realize I was pushing mine away in the process. If you're open to it, I'd really like to talk. Maybe over dinner?" Sarah closed the email. She stared at the screen for a long moment, her thumb hovering over reply. Then she set the phone down without answering. The next morning, as Sarah grabbed her keys to head to the boutique, another message came in. This one wasn't from Jack. It was from the commercial realtor. "The previous tenant of your space defaulted on a business loan. A financing opportunity may be available if you're serious about buying in." Sarah's breath caught. Buying in? Owning the shop outright? Her hands trembled slightly, but she smiled. This was bigger than she thought. "I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was taking back what I'd lost." Sarah stood in the middle of the boutique's dusty shell, blueprints spread across a folding table, sleeves rolled to her elbow. Outside, the soft hum of traffic drifted in from the street, but inside, all she heard was possibility. It had been years since she felt this alive. The previous tenant's bankruptcy had left behind fixtures, mirrors, and racks she could repurpose. Maggie had secured the lease, but now the realtor's offer sat in Sarah's inbox. A chance to buy in as a full partner. Ownership. Not charity. Not someone else's spare room. A stake in something real. Over the next few weeks, Sarah poured herself into the boutique like a woman possessed. She painted walls, replaced cracked tiles, and worked late into the night researching vendors and inventory systems. She and Maggie sketched logo ideas and argued over color palettes, laughing and drinking too much coffee. Sarah learned QuickBooks. She interviewed artisans and arranged display mock-ups. Her hands hurt, her back ached, but her soul was stretching back to life. Jack texted a few times, "Thinking about you today. Then let me know if you need help with the shop." Sarah didn't reply. The silence was no longer empty. It was protective. Grace stopped by with lunch one day, and stood in the middle of the boutique with her arms crossed. "You know," she said, "I haven't seen you in years." Sarah chuckled, brushing a paint smudge off her jean. "I forgot who I was." "You didn't forget. You just made room for everyone else, and left yourself behind." Sarah paused. The truth stung, but it fit. Opening day approached faster than she expected. The boutique Willow and Rue was ready. Soft lighting, repurposed wood counters, shelves lined with handmade candles, textiles, books, local art. A scent diffuser cast subtle notes of vanilla and sage. The store glowed with warmth and intention. Sarah stood at the front door with Maggie, both women clutching the ceremonial ribbon. "I'm terrified," Sarah whispered. "Me too," Maggie grinned, "but also kind of in love with it." They cut the ribbon. The doors opened, and people came. Customers wandered through, smiling and admiring. Old friends showed up. Neighbors, even a few bloggers, Grace had sneakily invited. Sales were better than they'd dared to hope. Sarah stood behind the counter, watching as someone bought a set of handmade mugs she'd picked out herself. Something swelled in her chest. It wasn't pride exactly. It was reclamation. She had built this. Not for Jack. Not for Amanda. Not to prove anything. Just for herself. That night, as she sat on Grace's porch with a glass of wine in hand, a message from Jack lit up her screen again. "The store looks amazing. Amanda and I drove by today. She said she might stop in tomorrow if that's okay." Sarah stared at the message, the glow of her phone reflecting in the wine glass. He still wanted to be part of her life, now that she'd proven she didn't need him to be. But the question wasn't whether Amanda could come in. The real question was, did she want to let them back in at all? The next morning, as Sarah opened the store alone, a woman stepped inside. Amanda. No makeup, no pretense. Just quiet eyes and a hesitant smile. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here because I think I made a mistake." Sarah swallowed hard. The bell over the door jingled behind her, but this time it didn't sound like warning. It sounded like change. The ribbon was cut, but it was the start of something much bigger than I ever imagined. The boutique was open. The days that followed were a blur of foot traffic, conversations and receipts tucked into the register drawer. Word spread fast. Locals stopped by just to see what all the fuss was about, and more often than not, they left with a bag in hand and a compliment for the space. Sarah floated between customers, adjusting displays, restocking shelves, and answering Maggie's whispers of "Can you believe this?" with wide-eyed nods. She'd done plenty in her life, raised a son, run a household, held jobs that paid the bills, but this felt like the first thing that had her name stitched into its fabric. One evening, as Sarah locked the boutique and turned off the lights, her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Jack, again. She stared at the screen for a second, then answered. "Hey, Mom," he said. "How's the shop?" "It's doing well," she said, tone measured. "I'm glad. Amanda told me she stopped by." She did. I think she was surprised. In a good way. There was a pause. Sarah didn't fill it. "I miss you," Jack finally said. She leaned against the cool glass of the storefront. "Do you miss me, or do you miss the version of me who never said no?" He was silent. Then, quietly, "Maybe both." Sarah didn't respond. Not with words anyway. The next week flew by. The boutique's momentum didn't let up. Sales continued steadily, but more than that, people lingered, they talked. They connected. Sarah had unknowingly created a space that was more than retail. It was community. One afternoon, a young woman browsing the journals asked if Sarah owned the place. When she said yes, the woman smiled. "I'm just starting over too," she said. "It's scary, but your shop feels like a good sign." Sarah thanked her, holding back tears until the customer left. She hadn't expected her healing to become contagious, but somehow it was. Grace showed up with cupcakes one Friday, grinning. "You've got reviews," she announced, waving her phone. "People are calling it elegant but grounded. Someone called you the calmest force in retail." Sarah laughed. "Is that a compliment or a diagnosis?" Grace handed her a cupcake. "It's both." They sat outside under the boutique's navy awning as dusk settled, watching the sun fade behind the trees. "Do you think Jack ever saw this version of you?" Grace asked. "No," Sarah said. "And I don't think I did either." The boutique's success led to something else. Something quieter but more powerful: financial security. Her first solo meeting with the bank had gone well. The advisor had praised her business plan, even asked if she'd consider mentoring a group of local women looking to launch similar ventures. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel like someone's dependent. She felt like someone's example. Then came the call. She was sorting new merchandise when her phone rang again, this time from the bank's small business liaison. "Hi, Sarah. Sorry to call out of the blue. I've got something you may want to look at. A nearby space just opened up, and a grant just became available for women-owned expansion. It's competitive, but you'd be a strong candidate." Sarah's heart pounded. Expansion? She hadn't even considered it. But now that the word had been spoken, it pulsed in her veins like adrenaline. That night she sat alone in the shop after closing, fingers tracing the edge of the counter. Across the room, her reflection looked back at her through the boutique's front window, steady, capable, unrecognizable from the woman who had once stood beside Jack's dining table, holding back tears. Now the question was no longer, "Can I do this?" It was, "How far do I want to go?" The opportunity was huge, but was it worth the risk? Sarah sat across from her financial advisor, a legal pad open in front of her. The word expansion was written in bold across the top. "There's demand," the advisor said, tapping her pen. "Your numbers are you've got brand appeal, foot traffic, and most importantly, momentum. If you're ever going to scale this, now's the time." Sarah nodded slowly, her hands folded tightly in her lap. It wasn't that she doubted her ability, it was that the stakes felt bigger now. This wasn't just about building a business, it was about building herself, and this next step would mean risk, money, time, pressure, all things she'd once buried for the sake of family. That night, she laid awake in Grace's guest room, staring at the ceiling. The boutique had already changed her life. But could she multiply that success? Did she want to? Or was part of her still waiting for the sky to fall? She picked up her phone and scrolled through old photos, her and Jack from birthdays past, beach trips when he was little, blurry selfies from the day he graduated college. They used to be each other's whole world. Now he was a stranger who sent polite texts and apologies wrapped in guilt. 2 days later, Sarah stood in the back room of Willow and Rue with Maggie, going over inventory. The space was bustling with customers, the front doorbell chiming every few minutes. "Tell me again why you're hesitating," Maggie said gently. Sarah sighed. "Because I've never done something this big without a safety net. There's no one to catch me if I fall." "Maybe that's the point," Maggie said. "Maybe you're not supposed to fall this time." Later that afternoon, Sarah received another message from Jack. "Mom, can we something's going on with Amanda's pregnancy. We need help." She stared at the screen. The words "we need help" echoed in her mind, but this time they felt different. Not like an olive branch, but like a lifeline flung only when convenient. She didn't reply. The next morning, Sarah walked into the bank with her business plan clutched in her bag. She sat down in the advisor's office, and laid the documents across the desk. "I want to move forward," she said. "I'm ready." The advisor smiled. "Then let's build something even bigger." Sarah stepped outside into the morning light, the weight of the decision settling into her shoulders, but it wasn't heavy. It was solid, earned. Hers. She texted Maggie, "We're expanding." Within minutes, Maggie replied with a string of excited emojis, and a voice memo, "Let's make magic." Back at the boutique, as Sarah reorganized a shipment of candles, she caught her reflection in the mirror behind the register. She didn't look like someone's ex-wife, or someone's mother. She looked like someone with a future. As she locked the boutique for the night, she turned around to find Amanda standing on the sidewalk. No stroller, no smile, just a look Sarah hadn't seen before, one of unease. "I need to talk to you," Amanda said, voice low. "It's not just about Jack or the baby. There's something else you need to know." Sarah didn't move. She waited, and for the first time Amanda looked scared. "I never expected Amanda to show up at my door, but she had a proposition that would change everything." Amanda stood on the sidewalk outside the boutique, arms crossed, her posture tight with uncertainty. Sarah unlocked the door without a word, and stepped aside. Amanda entered slowly, glancing around like she didn't recognize the space, like it hadn't been her husband's mother who built it from scratch. Sarah moved behind the register, folded her arms and waited. "I'm not here to cause drama," Amanda said quietly. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" Amanda hesitated. "Because I think we're both tired, and Jack, he's falling apart." They sat across from each other, at the boutique's consultation table, sunlight slanting in through the windows. Amanda looked thinner, her face drawn. "He's not sleeping," she said. "He's not himself. And I know that's not your responsibility, Sarah. I know we didn't handle things right." Sarah stayed silent. Amanda twisted her wedding ring. "When we asked you to leave, I thought it was just, I didn't realize what we were really doing. We made you feel disposable." "You didn't make me feel anything," Sarah said. "You treated me like I was in the way. I just finally believed it." Amanda flinched. "I came here," Amanda said, "because Jack and I aren't doing great. And I think I know, it started when we pushed you out. It changed something in him, in us." Sarah kept her voice measured. "And now that things are strained between you two, you want me to help fix it?" "No," Amanda said quickly. "I want to make peace. I want to figure out how to move forward, without pretending nothing happened." Sarah looked at her. "What does that mean exactly?" "I want us to start over," Amanda said. "Not as in-laws. As women who care about the same family and maybe, just maybe, can find common ground." Sarah's instincts told her to stay guarded. Amanda was polished, strategic, but today she seemed cracked open. "I've seen what you built here," Amanda said. "It's incredible. I respect you. I didn't before, and that's on me." Sarah blinked, surprised by the honesty. Amanda looked down. "If we can be civil again, maybe Jack and I can get back on track. He misses you. He's just too proud to say it right." Sarah studied her face, and for the first time in years, Amanda didn't seem like the enemy. She seemed like someone who'd finally hit the wall and was hoping for something solid to lean on. Still, Sarah knew better than to fall for convenience, disguised as sincerity. "I'll think about it," she said, voice calm. "But I'm not stepping backward into the past. If there's any future between us, it starts with honesty. All of it." Amanda nodded. "Understood." She stood to leave, smoothing her coat. "Thank you for letting me speak." Sarah didn't respond. She watched as Amanda opened the boutique door, paused in the sunlight, and disappeared down the street. That evening, after closing up shop, Sarah returned home to Grace's and found a large envelope on the kitchen table with her name on it. Grace pointed at it. It came by courier, from Jack. Sarah opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means Amanda kept her word and came to you first. I've tried to reach out in every way I know, but I understand now why you haven't responded. I messed up, and I've said those words before, but this time it's different. Because this time I've started seeing a therapist. I've started listening, and I've started admitting to myself that I pushed away the one person who never gave up on me. I don't expect a second chance, but if there's one thing I can give you, it's the truth. There's something I've been hiding, something I should have told you a long time ago." Sarah's hands trembled as she turned to the page. "Before the divorce, before everything, I made a decision about your financial accounts without telling you. I need to make it right, and you deserve to know the full story. Please just hear me out." Sarah folded the letter and stared at it, her mind spinning. This wasn't just an apology, it was a warning. The letter was simple, but it hit harder than anything he'd ever said to me. Sarah sat at Grace's kitchen table, long after the sun had set, the letter open in front of her. Her tea had gone cold, her pulse had. Jack's handwriting hadn't changed. Tight, neat, as if each word needed to prove its worth. But tonight, the words felt different. Stripped, raw, honest in a way he rarely was, especially with her. "I made a decision about your financial accounts without telling you." Her breath she scanned the next lines like they might rearrange themselves if she looked long enough. "Right before your divorce finalized, Amanda and I were panicking about money. Her business was failing. I had a client pull out last minute, and we were drowning in debt we didn't want to admit existed. So when the lawyer mentioned a clause in your trust about provisional access with family authorization, I didn't ask questions. I just signed. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd put it back. But then Amanda got pregnant, and it spiraled." Sarah's mind raced. She'd noticed strange fluctuations in her accounts months ago, but the bank said nothing looked suspicious. She never imagined her son had quietly accessed the funds she'd spent a lifetime building. She flipped to the final page. "You trusted me. And I abused that. I've spoken to the lawyer. I know what I did wasn't just unethical. It may have crossed legal lines. I'm prepared to make restitution. I'll sell the house if I have to. You have every right to hate me. But I hope, one day, you'll believe I'm trying to fix what I broke." Sarah folded the letter with trembling hands. So this wasn't just about a bedroom, or a baby. It had never been about space. It was about ownership, about control, about what was hers being quietly taken, piece by piece, by the people she loved most. The next morning, she called her financial advisor. "Run a full audit," she said calmly. "I need to know exactly how deep this goes." While she waited for the results, Sarah returned to the boutique, moving through the store with robotic precision. Maggie noticed her mood, and didn't, but by afternoon, the familiar ding of the front door pulled Sarah back to herself. A regular customer smiled and held up a gift bag. "This place saved me," she said, "so I thought I'd return the favor." Inside the bag was a small engraved bracelet. Unshakable. That evening Grace found Sarah staring at the ceiling in her room. "Are you okay?" "I'm beyond okay," Sarah said. "I'm angry. And that might be the most awake I've felt in years." Grace smiled softly. "So what now?" "I confront it," Sarah said. "Not just Jack, all of it. I rebuild from the ruins. And this time I don't ask permission." Later that night her phone buzzed. It was her attorney. Sarah, I've reviewed the documents. Jack and Amanda didn't just dip into your accounts, they liquidated part of your long-term investments, quietly, strategically. This wasn't a mistake, it was a plan. Sarah stood in the dark, every nerve in her body on fire. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. This was war. I was no longer looking for validation. I was creating my own future. Sarah stood at the window of her boutique before sunrise, coffee in hand, the city just beginning to stretch awake beneath a gray-pink sky. Behind her the shelves gleamed, restocked, realigned, and ready. This wasn't just a store anymore. It was proof that she had built something real. Without Jack, without Amanda, without permission. That phone call last night had changed everything. Not just the facts, the betrayal, the financial theft, the calculated nature of it all, but something in her, it flipped a switch. She was done grieving. Within days, Sarah met with a new legal team, one with teeth. They began drafting a formal case, not just for restitution, but full financial recovery. Her original advisor looped in a forensic accountant. The team began building a timeline of every unauthorized withdrawal Jack had made. I want this airtight, Sarah told them. No room for sympathy or negotiation. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused. At the boutique, she launched a new marketing campaign. Begin Again, aimed at women rebuilding after loss, betrayal, or life's unexpected resets. It struck a nerve. Sales doubled within a month. Local press picked up her story. Not the drama with Jack that was private, but the narrative of reinvention. A woman in her late 50s, launching a brand that spoke to resilience and starting over. Customers came not just for candles or curated essentials, but to connect with something real. Meanwhile, Jack's calls slowed. He texted occasionally, short apologies, vague updates, but Sarah didn't respond. He'd made his decisions in silence. Now, he could sit in it. Grace, ever supportive, helped Sarah redesign her apartment, turning a corner office space into a creative studio. It became a sanctuary. Sunlight, open bookshelves, mood boards. Sarah began working with local artisans, mentoring young women, launching their own brands. For the first time in decades, everything she poured herself into poured something back. One afternoon, while setting up a pop-up event in a neighboring city, Sarah's phone buzzed. Congratulations, Sarah. You've been selected as a keynote speaker for the Women Forward Conference in Chicago. We'd love for you to share your journey. Let us know if you accept. Sarah stared at the message, barely breathing. She thought of the woman she'd been just 6 months ago, crushed by a single sentence from her son. We need your bedroom for the baby. And now, people wanted to hear her speak. Not because of her pain, but because of what she'd done with it. At dinner that night, Grace raised a toast. To what's next? Sarah clinked glasses, her smile unforced. I used to think what I needed was closure, she said. But I think what I really needed was distance. The next morning, Sarah checked her email. A message blinked at the top of her inbox. Subject: Feature Opportunity. Forbes Women, urgent. She opened it. Ms. Carter, we're preparing a piece on late-stage entrepreneurs and stories of reinvention. Your name keeps coming up. Are you available for a full interview next week? Sarah blinked. The world wasn't just noticing, it was watching. And she was just getting started. The stage was set, but it was my time to shine in a way I never thought possible. The ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Rows of white chairs facing a wide stage lit in soft amber, branded banners flanking the podium. The Women Forward Conference was packed. Over 500 attendees. Cameras, lights, editors from Forbes Women and Inc. sat in the front row, notepads ready. Backstage, Sarah adjusted her navy blazer, the fabric crisp against her skin. A young assistant handed her a small mic and smiled. Nervous? She asked. Sarah smiled back. No, not today. Not after everything. Not after being told she was in the way, that her bedroom belonged to a baby, that her savings were someone else's safety net. She stepped onto the stage. The spotlight warmed her face. The room quieted. Sarah scanned the crowd, entrepreneurs, executives, working moms, survivors, women like her, women who had been overlooked, underestimated, silenced, and chose not to stay that way. Her voice was steady. I didn't set out to become a businesswoman. I set out to survive. She shared her story. Divorce after 30 years, moving in with her son, being asked to leave for the sake of space, only to discover betrayal buried deep beneath that polite request. She didn't cry, she didn't embellish, she told the truth, and it hit like thunder. Heads nod, eyes welled. She spoke about rebuilding, of starting with nothing but her name, her instincts, and a single promise: never again would I abandon myself for the comfort of others. The boutique, the mentorship, the upcoming expansion, not trophies, proof that reinvention wasn't a luxury, it was a right. She closed with a quiet, powerful line: they took the room I slept in. I built a world they can't enter. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation. In the green room after her talk, a woman in her 60s walked in, gray curls, trembling hands. She held a note scribbled on the conference program. I'm leaving my son's house tomorrow, she said. I thought I didn't have it in me, but then I heard you. Sarah hugged her tightly. Later at the networking reception, people swarmed her. Press requests, podcast interviews, book inquiries. A Forbes women editor pulled her aside. I don't usually say this after one event, she said, but you don't just have a story, you have a platform. Have you considered a speaking tour? Sarah smiled. I'm just getting used to a microphone. The editor grinned. Get used to more than that. Across the room by the bar, Sarah saw him, Jack, his hands stuffed in his coat pockets, his shoulders hunched like a child sent to the principal's office. He hadn't RSVP'd, hadn't warned her, but here he was, watching from a distance. He didn't come closer, didn't interrupt, just watched her talk to press, shake hands, sign copies of the event program, and maybe that was enough. Sarah turned back to her conversation and let him disappear into the crowd. That night, back in her hotel room, her phone rang. It was her former colleague from her pre-divorce corporate job. Sarah, I saw your speech. I'm heading a venture fund now. We back women founders with growth stage capital. I want to invest in you. Sarah stepped onto the hotel balcony, the city glittering below. Not long ago she'd stood outside her son's house with a duffel bag, and nowhere to go. Now people were offering her the key to everything. This wasn't just money, it was validation of everything I had worked for. The investment firm's office sat high above the city, glass walls stretching from floor to ceiling. Sarah stood at the window, overlooking the skyline, her reflection layered over steel and sky. She had never been in a boardroom like this as the one holding power. Always the note-taker, the organizer, the mother waiting in the car. Not anymore. Across the table sat Evelyn Cross, founder of Maven Rise Capital, a woman known for backing late-stage women entrepreneurs. Sarah's talk at the conference had reached her. The buzz around Willow and Rue had caught her attention, but it was Sarah's composure, her grit, that sealed the deal. I don't just want to fund your business, Evelyn said, tapping the file in front of her. I want to amplify it. Sarah opened the folder. Numbers, projection, a strategic roadmap that showed her boutique scaling into a national brand within 2 years. It took her breath away. Back at the boutique, she paced the back room, Evelyn's proposal in hand. Grace sat across from her, watching her closely. You're not doubting yourself again, are you? Sarah shook her head. No, I'm realizing how small I used to think. She thought of Jack, of Amanda, of the way they'd boxed her into a corner, made her feel like excess space in her own life. And now she was being offered a platform they could never touch. Sarah called Evelyn that afternoon. I'm in, she said. The next month passed in a blur. Lawyers, contracts, PR teams, branding consultants. Evelyn's people moved fast, and Sarah kept pace. She signed the deal at the same conference table, her name etched on a thick legal packet, $2.8 million in seed capital, a 40% equity partnership, national rollout strategy, 10 cities, and full creative control. Her phone buzzed constantly now. Interview requests, vendor partnerships, women from across the country asking how she did it. She answered every one with truth. I started from heartbreak. One morning, an envelope arrived at the boutique. Jack's handwriting on the front. Sarah opened it carefully, expecting more apologies, but it was short. You've built something beautiful. I was blind not to see it sooner. I hope one day we can sit down and talk. No expectations, just truth. I'm proud of you, Jack. She stared at the words for a long time, then slid them into her drawer. She didn't need them to move forward, but they no longer had the power to pull her back. The new Willow and Rue flagship opened in San Diego with a launch party that drew 100 guests. The store sparkled with handcrafted displays, fresh florals, and a wall dedicated to stories from women rebuilding after loss. Sarah stood near the register, watching two customers hold hands while reading a card that said, "Take back your space. You were never the problem. You were the purpose." She exhaled, a quiet kind of joy settling in her bones. That night, on the balcony of her new penthouse apartment overlooking the Pacific, her phone buzzed. A new email, subject invitation. Women's Global Summit 2026, Geneva, Switzerland. We would be honored to have you as our keynote speaker to discuss female leadership, financial resilience, and global entrepreneurship. Please confirm your attendance at your earliest convenience. Sarah looked out at the sea, the wind in her hair. She'd left one room behind and walked straight into the world. I didn't just build a business, I built a legacy. A light drizzle glazed the city as Sarah stepped onto the stage in Geneva, Switzerland. The audience hushed beneath the soft amber lights of the Global Summit Hall. Behind her, the screen displayed 5 words in tall, elegant font: Sarah Carter, founder, builder, voice. The applause roared before she even spoke. She took a deep breath. This wasn't nerves, it was reverence. For the journey, for the fire that forged her. 3 years ago she was being asked to give up her bedroom for a baby. Now she was standing among prime ministers, CEOs, human rights activists, and world-class minds. No one in this room saw her as an afterthought. No one dared to. She began her speech the way she lived now. Honest, grounded, unforgettable. I used to believe my value came from being needed, but need fades, respect endures. Today, I don't chase permission. I don't wait for invitations. I create rooms, and I filled. The audience rows of women in suits and headscarves, interpreters whispering translations, young entrepreneurs scribbling notes, rose to their feet the moment she finished. And just like that, Sarah Carter became something bigger than a brand. She became a movement. Back in the States, Willow and Rue had grown into a 25-store empire, with a thriving online platform and a podcast that reached over 1 million subscribers. Sarah was named one of Forbes' 50 over 50 most influential entrepreneurs. Her face appeared on the cover, beside the headline, "Late Bloomer, Try Game Changer." She wasn't chasing anything anymore. She was the thing. Despite all the invitations, awards and accolades, Sarah made time for mentorship. Every Thursday morning she met with a group of 10 women starting over from divorce, from grief, from nothing. She told them the truth. You are not a burden, you are the foundation. And every time she said it, she remembered the version of herself who had stood outside her son's home in silence, carrying her life in a single duffel bag. Jack reached out sparingly now. A birthday message, a text on Mother's Day, a donation to one of her foundation's causes. There were no long conversations, no dramatic reconciliations, just quiet acknowledgments of distance and choices, and Sarah was at peace with that. Amanda, she heard, had gone back to school. Jack had taken a lower-paying job closer to home. Their baby, a girl now in preschool, was thriving. Sarah sometimes wondered if the little girl knew her name, but she didn't linger in that thought. She wasn't trying to be remembered. She was too busy making history. One crisp October morning, Sarah received a sealed envelope with an embossed gold crest. Inside was a single card. The United Nations invites Sarah Carter to serve as an ambassador for women's financial empowerment on the Global Policy Council. Please confirm your attendance in New York City. Sarah closed the card, her hands steady. This wasn't a detour. This was the destination. The world was waiting, and I was ready to take it on. The United Nations building rose like a monument to resilience, flanked by flags fluttering in the autumn breeze. Inside, the chamber buzzed with quiet intensity, translators murmuring, delegates shuffling papers, cameras angling for clean shots. Sarah adjusted the navy silk scarf around her neck and stepped up to the polished podium. Behind her, a glowing screen read, Sarah Carter, Global Ambassador for Women's Financial Empowerment. She looked across the crowd, ambassadors, policymakers, young leaders, but she didn't speak for them. She spoke for every woman who had ever been told she was too much, too late, or in the way. I was asked to leave my son's house to make room for his child, Sarah said, so I made room for myself in the world instead. Her speech swept through the chamber like a wind, cutting clean and unapologetic. She spoke of financial manipulation masked as love, of the silent erasure that so many women face behind closed doors, and of how rebuilding from rock bottom had taught her the one thing no business school could. We don't reclaim power by waiting. We reclaim it by building, loudly in full view. When she finished, the room rose, a standing ovation from diplomats and delegates alike. Not polite applause, reverence. That night, Sarah sat on the balcony of her Manhattan suite, overlooking the East River. She sipped her tea slowly, watching the lights shimmer on the water. A notification buzzed her phone. New follower, Michelle Obama official. She laughed, soft, disbelieving, joyful. Her smile faded into something quieter, more grounded. She wasn't chasing glory, she was chasing impact. In the months that followed, Sarah launched a new global initiative, Firm Women, a digital accelerator funding and mentoring women ages 40 plus, launching second act businesses. Within 6 months, it had chapters in 5 countries. Her team expanded. Her platform deepened. Her inbox overflowed with messages from women who'd once believed their best years were behind them. And through it all, Sarah stayed focused on her purpose. Not fame, not revenge, but rewriting what it means to begin again. She was asked to lead a panel at Davos, to co-author a book with 2 Nobel laureates, to guest teach at Wharton, and she did it all with calm conviction, as though none of this surprised her anymore. Because it didn't. Sarah's name now carried weight in circles that once wouldn't have returned her email. But more importantly, it carried weight in her own mind. She no longer second-guessed herself, no longer explained her worth, no longer grieved what she'd lost. She celebrated what she'd built. One morning her assistant handed her a silver-embossed invitation. It was from the World Economic Forum's Executive Committee. They wanted Sarah to join a high-profile global leadership panel, shaping future economic policies for women in underrepresented regions. Not just as a speaker, as a voting member. Sarah ran her fingers across the card. The weight of it felt like stone and sky, heavy and infinite. She turned to the window, the city awake and moving beneath her. The next chapter wasn't waiting, it was calling. I was no longer looking for approval, I was creating my own destiny. A soft spring wind moved through the trees outside the World Policy Summit venue in Seoul. Inside, Sarah stood near a floor-to-ceiling window, watching cherry blossoms drift through the courtyard like falling confetti. Her name tag read, Sarah Carter, Global Economic Leadership Council, voting member. A title she never sought, but one she earned in full. Behind her, panels ran on climate equity, refugee entrepreneurship, maternal health funding. But when Sarah took the stage for her segment on global financial access for women, the room went still. We can't talk about the future, she said, without including the women who've already survived what most leaders will never understand. After the applause, a delegate from Rwanda approached. I've played your speech from Geneva to my community dozens of times, she said. They call you the woman who rebuilt. Sarah's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Not here. Because it wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about showing up for others. Back in New York, Sarah launched the 58 Fund, a venture fund named after the age she'd been when she was told to leave her son's home. The fund invested in women over 50, who were starting new lives, careers, companies, foundations. Sarah met every founder personally. She told them her story. She listened to theirs. Each investment wasn't just capital. It was proof that beginning again didn't have an expiration date. She bought a cabin in Vermont, quiet, pine-wrapped, serene. On weekends she sat by the fire with a journal in her lap. Her dog curled at her feet. She wrote speeches, grant proposals, and sometimes just single-line truths, like they closed one door. I built a city. Jack sent the occasional update, photos of the little girl now in kindergarten. Sarah responded politely, Never cold, never warm. There were no holidays shared, no dinners arranged, just a clean, respectful distance. Amanda never reached out again, and that was okay. Sarah had forgiven them both, but forgiveness didn't always require reunion. She wasn't bitter. She was busy, with joy, with purpose, with everything she'd once believed belonged only to younger women with clearer paths. Her calendar was full of summits, mentorship sessions, and private time to recharge in the life she'd handcrafted. She received her final accolade on a bright May morning. In honor of her contributions to economic equity, personal reinvention, and global entrepreneurship, Sarah Carter is named one of Time's 100 Women of the Century. Her portrait, confident, silver-haired, unapologetic, ran beside women like Eleanor Roosevelt, Malala Yousafzai, and Oprah Winfrey. And yet Sarah still walked her dog through Central Park like any other woman with good shoes and a clear conscience. On her 65th birthday, Sarah hosted a private gathering for every woman her fund had helped. There were 110. They gathered in a rooftop garden lit with lanterns, eating, laughing, hugging, planning. Sarah stood at the center, no longer the beginning of the movement, just one part of the circle it created. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, someone asked her, "What comes next for you?" Sarah raised a glass and smiled. "Whatever I decide." She wasn't anyone's bird, wasn't anyone's regret, wasn't anyone's backup plan. She was her own blueprint. Sarah's story lives on in every woman who dares to begin again.